Optimism in Action is produced in collaboration with KAZU, your NPR station for the Monterey Bay area of California. You'll find this episode and archived episodes at kazu.org/sidebar.
If we can catch those kids while the cement is still wet, you could totally change the trajectory of their lives. And we see it time and again. So that's what keeps us coming back and keeps our focus and outlook. We see it so often, just these lives that are first saved and then made, and it's really gratifying.
That's today's guest on Sidebar, Drew Moser, Executive Director of the Lucky Duck Foundation.
Sidebar is brought to you by Monterey College of Law, San Luis Obispo College of Law, Kern County College of Law, and Empire College of Law, located in Santa Rosa.
Welcome to Sidebar, featuring conversations about optimism in action with lawyers and leaders inspiring change. And now your co-hosts, Jackie Gardina and Mitch Winnick.
Jackie, we're delighted to have Drew Moser here today with the Lucky Duck Foundation. He's the executive director of an organization that's been in San Diego since 2005. We're going to hear from Drew is that it started as a nonprofit foundation and has evolved to assist those experiencing homelessness. Drew, welcome to Sidebar.
Thank you for having me.
Drew, welcome. And I'm excited to talk to you about the work that you're doing in San Diego.
Same. Thank you.
Drew, before we get started, tell us about your journey into nonprofit.
Well, I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd work in the nonprofit space, let alone philanthropy and homelessness, as I have a business degree and an MBA. But that's what our group does, frankly, is tries to apply business principles to this social issue of homelessness, governed by some really credible business leaders in San Diego that I got to know through my previous role as the president of the San Diego Sports Association and Hall of Champions. And prior to that, I was coaching basketball at the University of San Diego in the high school level. So when you boil it all down, I'm just a dumb jock. But it was really through the Hall of Champions and the Sports Commission, I got to meet a lot of really great business people in town. And there was a fair amount of overlap with that board of directors and the board at Lucky Duck. And I watched a lot of respect and admiration for what they were doing and how they were going about it to basically say, we're going to take homelessness head on. We're going to collaborate with or pressure the mayor and some of the electeds into taking practical action. And they had some success, and they were able to help hundreds of people move indoors quickly and start the process of reducing homelessness. And so I told them, if I can help the cause in any way, I'm not currently able to write checks at the capacity that you are right now. It's my goal to someday, but I told them if I can give you what time and what little talent I have to help the cause, I'm happy to. I've spent a year volunteering with them to learn more about the issue and how Lucky Duck was going about it, and was all volunteer led up to that point. And I was fortunate to join them as a full-time employee, their very first ever full-time employee. I've been with them for several years now. It's a great group of people. It's gratifying but challenging work. And that's what we try to do, is bring a great sense of urgency and business principles to this issue.
That intrigues me, Drew. Just what do you mean by business principles?
Well, a lot of the politicians love to talk about adding or acquiring housing. And from our perspective, housing is an ideal outcome, but it's a significant cost, and it's years, if not decades away. And so one thing our group has done is purchase and installed several industrial tent structures that go up within months for literally pennies on the dollar compared to the cost of adding housing. We'll purchase the asset, we'll cover the cost to construct it, we'll ask government to identify land and provide some operating dollars to hire a service provider to come in and operate the structure. But when you talk about economies of scale, it's not even close with the cost of adding housing. And so we come at it with sort of that sense of urgency, but also how can we get the greatest bang for the buck to help people find a brighter pathway. That's just one example.
And Drew, are you able to partner with other agencies within San Diego that'll offer things such as mental health counseling and other skills training?
Yes, absolutely. Collaboration is part and parcel to who we are and what we do. I could give you a few quick examples. We just created something we're calling United for Youth. So everything we do, we've prioritized youth and seniors. United for Youth is a collaboration of about 40 different organizations focused on current and former foster youth, because unfortunately foster youth have a much higher propensity for falling on the streets. And so we have created a partnership called United for Youth that will bring together these organizations to help about 500 youth over the next couple of years secure employment, housing, and mentorship. It leverages each of those organizations' strong suits. The way the funding works is we brought these organizations together and said, tell us what's working, what's not, what are the gaps and opportunities. Did this with another major foundation in town. And then we previewed an RFP for them to make sure we heard them correctly. And then we said, okay, we'll apply, but co-apply. We want this to be a deeply collaborative effort. So we got about a dozen or so proposals. About half of those were really compelling. And ultimately, those merged into one really strong proposal that we feel great about, that we just launched that a couple of months ago, and really excited to get that off the ground. Each of those organizations, presidents, board chairs, and program director or manager signed a document, a commitment to collaborate document, we're calling it, that spells out how they are going to work together. Because we're all about knocking down silos and knocking down walls, because it can be a fairly competitive environment. We've never understood that. If we're all rowing in the same direction, we should all work together. And so that's one thing that we try to compel on a daily basis. Another example of that is we've funded more than 25 different employment and job training programs that have employed over 2,000 individuals. One of those programs hires shelter residents at the Salvation Army. Feeding San Diego then provides a vehicle plus all the different retail outlets to go rescue food. And then funding from the Lucky Duck Foundation covers all the gas plus the wages and maintenance and insurance to make the whole program operate. Well, that program's rescued well over 900,000 pounds of food. And just about every person that's gone through it has gone on to secure long-term employment and housing. So none of us could do that on our own, but by coming together, leveraging strong suits, we can create some pretty solid outcomes and change a lot of lives, while also redirecting perfectly viable food to those who are homeless or on the brink.
Drew, highlight on your website that this is a model that you hope will be followed, or that may be followed in other communities. What you just described was just an amazing collaboration of different resources that clearly works, from getting people housed, at least in a shelter, and then matching all these other services. Tell us a little about that. Are they contacting you about how to do this elsewhere? It would seem like this is a successful model that ought to be followed.
Without a doubt. When the bridge shelters went up, there was well over, I think, 60 different municipalities that came out to San Diego to see that model and understand how it works and try to replicate it in their communities. Oftentimes, when something like that's proposed, the neighborhood will push back and say, you're not putting homeless people in our neck of the woods over here. And then once those went up, a lot of them said, wow, this actually works. This cleans up the neighborhood. It helps people move inside and find a brighter pathway. And so with any of these programs we've been able to activate, we're all about sharing the success stories in the model, because there's nothing proprietary about it. If we can emulate the bridge shelters or some of these employment programs or United for Youth or a lot of the other efforts we've been able to stand up, we're all for that. And there's been other cities that have formed their own business group, much like our group did, and they've come to San Diego to seek out advice and shortcuts, and we'll help them when and where we can. If we can take steps that are tangible and meaningful and really helping people, and that can be replicated elsewhere, we are all for that.
Drew, just to follow up to make sure that I'm understanding the Bridge Shelter program, because it sounds really exciting and has the potential to really make a meaningful impact elsewhere like it has in San Diego. Homelessness, an intractable problem. You've identified one of the reasons why, which is we get a focus on we need more affordable housing, and then we run into the time and money it takes to make that a reality. So one of the things I know for a lot of unhoused individuals is getting a job is difficult because they have no permanent address. Is the Bridge Shelter a permanent address that they can use for purposes of getting benefits, applying for jobs?
There's actually a location a few blocks away from the bridge shelter that will serve as a permanent address. That said, we've supported employment programs that take place within the shelter itself. There's this program called Wheels for Change. We provided a van and funding to cover wages to hire bridge shelter residents right there on the spot so they could load up in a van and go out and clean up trash throughout the city of San Diego. And they get paid right there on the spot after their 4-hour shift. And oftentimes what they'll do is take the money and send it to a family member for a birthday present or what have you. You have the added benefit of giving people employment on the spot, plus it cleans up the community. There's another program we have that's called Cash for Trash, well, that's basically a dumpster at a block downtown managed by one of our volunteers. And for every bag of trash that a homeless individual cleans up, there's $2 provided to them right then and there. Well, that program's removed 225 tons of trash in downtown San Diego alone. We're trying to inject hope into everything that we do and help people find a brighter pathway. And to your point about employment opportunities and the need for a permanent mailing address, those are just a few ways that we can help people take the next step towards ideally self-sustainability.
Drew, one of the things that strikes me in your description of this goes back to the way where you started this discussion of bringing a business principles model. It sounds like it's been critical that you have not just your foundation, but you have a cross-section of the business community engaged in these solutions, and that you're bringing those strategies into this approach. And that's so different to me than what we hear in many other well-meaning homeless challenges where they're just handing out federal or state dollars, but it doesn't integrate into the business community. It just strikes me that seems like a dramatically unique aspect of what you're doing.
There's something called the Tuesday Group that was created by Peter Seidler, who's the late owner of the San Diego Padres Major League Baseball team. Peter, about 9 or 10 years ago, basically said, this homelessness issue is getting out of hand. We're not seeing a whole lot of leadership or action from local government. We, being the private sector, need to get organized and figure out what we can do to influence change. And so he recruited some credible business people around town, including the co-founders of the Lucky Duck Foundation and Dan Shea and a few other just longtime, highly respected, know how to get things done kind of business people. Peter said, we're going to meet every Tuesday until we no longer need to strategize on what can the private sector plus philanthropy through the Lucky Duck Foundation do to help people. Well, that group has not missed a meeting since 2016, including all holidays and including tragically the day that Peter passed away, because this group cares deeply and is just laser focused on what can we do today as quickly as possible to help people in need, instead of like some of the politicians do, talk about it or, kick the can down the road of, we need to do this big housing project. You're right, Mitch, and that's just one example of this group's grave concern for results with absolutely no concern for any level of credit.
I love the commitment of citizens of the community in which they're living to make the community a better place for everyone who's there, those who are fortunate and those who perhaps are unfortunate. One of the questions that I have about that idea of finding short-term solutions to improve people's lives versus that kind of long-term solution like more affordable housing. Does Lucky Duck also work and advocate for what they perceive to be the right long-term solutions through policy?
To a certain extent, yes. So we basically believe, look, we need to operate along parallel paths. Our path is going to be, how can we most quickly, humanely, cost-effectively help people move off the streets, to reduce homelessness, to help people find a brighter pathway, and ideally a long-term strategy. Others should absolutely be focused on what are some innovative and cost-effective housing strategies that can come online quickly. In San Diego, it's easily $500,000 a door, if not much more than that. So it's really hard to scale. Plus, there's the time factor. And the way we view it is, look, nobody fights an active wildfire by planting more trees. We need to start the process of containing the issue and helping people move inside and access shelter or access detox or whatever level of service they might need. So that's the lane we're going to operate in, is the here and the now. How can we alleviate suffering? And, some of this, look, it's king size band-aids, but we just believe wholeheartedly in helping some of those poor souls that are out there suffering, helping them find a brighter pathway. And others can focus on the more long-term options.
Support for Optimism in Action comes from the Monterey College of Law, a nonprofit law school serving the Monterey Bay region with evening classes on campus or in a hybrid online format. More details and applications available at montereylaw.edu. That's montereylaw.edu.
Drew, let me ask you about one specific project that caught my eye. This concept of sleeping bag coats. Wasn't that something uniquely developed by the Lucky Duck Foundation?
Not developed, but we actually are now the largest purveyor in the world of those coats. They're winter coats that fold out and transform into sleeping bags made for essentially sub-zero temperatures. And they're made by formerly homeless individuals who are hired full-time to manufacture them. They're made by an organization called the Empowerment Plan in Detroit, and this was a college project of their founder, Veronica Scott, and she turned it into this really excellent nonprofit organization that employs people coming out of or overcoming homelessness to make them. They spend about half of their time making the coats, the other half of the time working on case management and employment navigation and securing housing and really just getting back on their feet. So this winter, we will distribute 4,000 winter coats across the county, and that'll bring our total to over 21,000 coats distributed over the last 5 or 6 winters. Some of the testimonials that we hear of people who have overcome homelessness, but while they were homeless, benefited from this coat are incredibly powerful. I was just talking to somebody not too long ago who said, I basically had to barter for the first one because they're so valuable and so warm. And he buried his from one winter to the next so that when winter rolled around the next year, he knew exactly where it was and that it would be safe. Sure enough, he went back there and got it and retrieved it and used it again. And he's now in a much better place in life, but he is certainly not the only one that's called that coat life-saving.
Just that story alone, I think, highlights something about your organization. You have an advisory committee of people who were formerly homeless and who can share those kinds of experiences and make concrete suggestions to you and the organization about what works and what doesn't. How do you use that advisory committee?
Yeah, this is a group of about 6 individuals that are formerly homeless, and we really look to them to inform our work. Some boards, they'll have 1 or maybe 2 people have some level of experience with homelessness, but we thought, no, we need to bring a lot of voices to the table. That committee is actually chaired by a board member who spent a lot of his youth on the streets, unfortunately. And so we'll bring them together on a regular basis and get their take on what should Lucky Duck be contemplating investing in, or what should we be prioritizing, or how do they think about XYZ strategy? And the feedback that we get from them is really, really informative. We have this Be a Friend program that pairs volunteers with individuals overcoming homelessness, and they're able to help with that as well, whether it's being a friend or identifying an organization that could benefit from that program. There's a lot of ways that advisory committee plugs in and really helps elevate our work.
Drew, there's 2 aspects of funding that we've heard in other programs here on Sidebar. One is, I think, fairly unique to what you're doing, which is your founders have a co-matching program. They are matching money. Tell us a little about how that works.
Our co-founders, Pat and Stephanie Kilkenny, they're the best. That's the only way I know how to describe them to people that don't know them. And they're all in. I mean, they give not just treasure, but they give time and talent. And so they currently match all donations up to $1.5 million per year. And their foot's on the gas. We haven't announced it publicly yet, but we will soon that match will increase to $2 million. And that's their personal contribution. And 20 or so years ago, they said, writing a check to charity isn't good enough. Let's get our friends and family together and tell them whatever they contribute, we'll personally match so we can significantly increase our impact. And that's how it's been essentially from day one. And more people, thankfully, are getting involved. I think they love knowing that their donations are doubled and that our co-founders are fully invested. They lead by example. They don't want any credit. They just big-hearted people that are humble and care about helping those in need. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about them and their generosity.
Drew, on the funding side of things, the other thing we've heard from nonprofits is the idea that the decrease in federal funding that has been available for certain organizations is causing a potential budget crunch. And I'm wondering how Lucky Duck is affected by the decrease in federal funding, which may affect the ability for the local community and the state to provide funding that it may have had in the past. How is Lucky Duck affected by that?
We don't pursue government dollars. We pursue government to do its job through a few different strategies. To our earlier discussion about collaborations, we try to bring together a lot of the youth providers to say, okay, help us understand in the aggregate how much federal funding is coming to the region. What is at risk? What does that look like across the region, not just for your organization, so that we can think about a more macroeconomic perspective. If we can get those organizations in lockstep and focused on what's possible with what they have now, what's possible if things get changed, can we understand what that delta is and then go advocate at the county or at the state to say, here's what is at risk, but this is what these organizations have committed to, and they're truly linking arms in the name of helping homeless youth find a brighter pathway. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how we're approaching some of these changes at the federal level.
Drew, I know a lot of people think this is just an unbelievable challenge to address homelessness in our communities, particularly in urban settings. You shared so many positive things you're doing. Our theme is optimism. What brings you back each day to do this work that makes you optimistic that it won't just help those individuals that day, but that we might actually make systemic change to have this be less of a problem going forward?
I tell people I sleep good at night because I really feel confident about where we deploy our resources and the impact it has, because we get to see firsthand some of these lives changed. One of the individuals that went through that food rescue employment program I mentioned earlier, he went on to then lead that program. And then he went on, now he's the shelter manager for another organization. So he went from homeless, addicted, lost his family, to taking these steps to move off the streets, get the help he needs, gain employment, get that experience, and do nothing but move onward and upward, and still in touch to this day. And he's doing really great things with his life. And we see that so often, especially with youth. They need a good landing spot and a little bit of hope breathed into them. And then so many of them take off. You know, when you look at the chronically homeless population, about half of them suffered homelessness as youth. If we can catch those kids while the cement is still wet, you could totally change the trajectory of their lives. And we see it time and again. So that's what keeps us coming back and keeps our focus and outlook. We see it so often, just these lives that are first saved and then made, and it's really gratifying.
So Drew, how can people contribute to the work that you're doing? And what are the ways that either within San Diego or somebody outside of San Diego who's listening to this but wants to be a part of the solution?
Our mantra is to share your luck. If you consider yourself to have had some good luck and good fortune in your life, share that luck with those in need. Whether it's gift of time, talent, or treasure, there's a multitude of ways to plug in. If people go to our website, luckyduckfoundation.org, there's a button, Share Your Luck, and it'll have a drop-down tab of different ways people can give, whether it's being a friend through the Be a Friend program or packing meals through our food and water outreach program, being a monthly donor, donating stock or real estate, or including us in their estate. There's a multitude of ways to get involved, and there's a lot more information on our website.
Drew, thank you. And you started this interview out with your story about how you got connected to Lucky Duck. And it was you saying, I don't yet have the wealth to contribute, but I'll give you the time and the talent that I have. By taking the helm at Lucky Duck, I'm not sure you're ever going to have the wealth to give because working in the not-for-profit world tends not to be profitable. I think Lucky Duck is incredibly fortunate that you've decided to dedicate your time and talent, because it sounds like you're doing really amazing things. And I'm so glad that you took the time to tell us about it tonight.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm very fortunate to be here. It's a great group. It's gratifying work. It's really special getting to see lives changed and facilitating the generosity of those that want to get involved to put their money to work in really tangible and measurable ways. So really appreciate you bringing me on and highlighting some of the work that we're able to do.
Well, thanks, Drew. And not only do I echo what Jackie just said about your efforts that seem to be bringing a lot to this organization, I think some of the creative ideas of how you guys are knitting together all of these community resources for this really continuum of care may be an example that other communities and other individuals who hear this story can replicate in their towns and cities.
If they can be replicated elsewhere, that's a win in our book.
Thanks, Drew. Take care.
Thank you both.
Jackie, this was a great interview with Drew Moser of Lucky Duck Foundation. I can tell you one thing that really struck me about this conversation is when he started talking about bringing business principles into addressing homelessness, I was a little skeptical about what did that mean. And then we heard about how they've taken these very practical, strategic steps to match together various resources throughout the community to have the type of impact they've had. I'm convinced they're doing a great job, and I'm convinced this is a model that other communities ought to be considering.
I agree, Mitch. And I think one of the things that really was heartening about his description, and we've talked about this in other episodes about optimism in action, is the idea that 6 people got together every Tuesday to say this is a problem that needs to be solved, and we're going to keep meeting until it gets solved. And they came up with this foundation. And it sounds like they came up with the name Lucky Duck, Share Your Luck, because they knew how fortunate they were not to be in a situation where they were unhoused or lacked a job or didn't have family support. I love it when we get to hear the origin stories of these organizations, because that's really people saying something needs to be done and we're the ones who can start it. Once again, I want to thank everyone who joined us today on Sidebar. And as always, Mitch and I would love to know what's on your mind. You can reach us at SideBarMedia.org.
Sidebar would not be possible without our producer, David Eakin, who composes and plays all of the music you hear on Sidebar. Thank you also to Dina Dowsett, who creates and coordinates Sidebar's social media marketing.
Optimism in Action is produced in collaboration with KAZU, your NPR station for the Monterey Bay area of California. You'll find this episode and archived episodes at kazu.org/sidebar.